My name is Maria Lennartsson. I work for the City of Stockholm. We're one of the partners in the ANCHOR partnership. And we are going to have this lunch talk about drivers today. So, if I start with a very short introduction to... Oh, I ended up not in the beginning. The ANCHOR project had its first cross-border lunch meeting in Ghent in December, and this is the second one. We will be holding these kind of meetings on a regular basis. And why are we working together in the ANCHOR project? We're looking at developing knowledge to transition towards water-wise neighborhoods. And this, in the ANCHOR project, is done by using source-separated wastewater systems, where the different flows of wastewater is collected from the different parts of the households and being used for different purposes. Grey water can be either reused in the green area of the city or even transformed into drinking water. And the black water that contains lots of nutrients can be used for replacing fertilizers. But the whole idea is to reuse the resources in the wastewater. And how are we doing it? There are 5 very interesting demo projects throughout Europe, starting at Helsingborg in Sweden, going to Jenfelder in Germany, and I'm sorry, and I don't remember the names. Anyway, in Amsterdam and in Kerkrade in the Netherlands, and then in Ghent in Belgium. And today we will be hearing from Helsingborg, Hamburg, and Kerkrade, some of the experiences. The project will be mapping impacts of decentralized water systems. It will be engaging closely with stakeholders and delivering practical tools and transition knowledge towards the end. It is a cooperation between 8 different partners, both research institutions, municipalities, utilities, and consultants. Today's agenda is that we are going to discuss the drivers from a more theoretical perspective, and then we'll hear some experiences from Hamburg, Helsingborg, and Kerkrade. And at the end, we'll have an open possibility for questions and answers. Anyone who has a question, please post them in the Q&A, and then we'll discuss it towards the end. To begin with, we would like to know a little bit more of who you are. I'm going to change my so we'll go to the Menti. So please log on to the Menti website. Hopefully you have been able to do so now. So I will go to the first question. So what kind of organization are you working for? Still replies coming in, so we'll wait for a minute or so, but seems like most of you are from research organizations, but it's interesting to see that there are lots of people from municipalities as well. Okay, very interesting. Thank you for that. And then we'll go to the next question. So if you're involved in any kind of project, where in the process are you? Okay, a majority of you are planning. Very interesting. So happy to see that there are lots of people that are not really active, but you're still interested enough to listen in. That's great. Okay. Also to get some background on what project you're involved in. If you just could print the name of the project that you are involved in. Oh, lots of variety here. Very interesting. Great. Thank you very much. Then I'll leave the floor to Elisabeth Kvarnström. So please go ahead and give us some background on drivers.
Thank you, Maria. I don't think you introduced yourself.
Oh,
So you could do that while I screen maybe.
My name is Maria Lennartsson, and I work for the city of Stockholm. We've been planning for a source-separated wastewater system for quite some time in Norra Djurgårdsstaden, so we're actively involved in the ANCHOR project to gain experiences from the existing projects, but also sharing the knowledge that we've been developing so far.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and sorry for I think you had to look at my silent face while Maria was talking because we are sitting in the same room and we didn't want to mess up with the sound, so sorry about that. Anyways, Elisabeth Kvarnström is my name and I'm here because I work for the city of Stockholm within this project, the ANCHOR project. I'm going to give a quick overview of drivers for source separating wastewater systems as we have seen it in Sweden from working in different projects and constellations with water utilities here and other stakeholders. But just a few words. Maria has already introduced a little bit about source separating wastewater systems. And there will be, if you want to work with these projects clearly, there will be infrastructural consequences of working with these systems in urban areas. First of all, you will have to collect the small volume of black water that is very nutrient rich, as Maria said, separately from the more voluminous grey water. And you will have to start that already in the building, of course. And you want to collect the black water in as concentrated form as possible. So you would maybe want to use, as all the pilot projects in ANCHOR, use a vacuum system for collecting your black water. And then you need your vacuum toilets and you need your vacuum pipe system in the building already. And In the transport, you need to keep those two fractions, the small volume nutrient-rich black water separate from the grey water, also in the streets. And so the big shift from what is the kind of golden standard today for conventional sewers, where you have a duplicate system, where stormwater, at least in theory, is conveyed in one pipe, and then you have the wastewater in the second pipe, duplicate system. In source separating wastewater system, you will need 3 pipes. You will need a third pipe for the very small volume but nutrient-rich black water. You will have to have 1 pipe for grey water and 1 for stormwater, so a triplicate system, if you will. There are also consequences at the treatment plant. You will learn more if you continue to come to our cross-border lunch meetings from all our pilots. They have certainly been breaking new ground in terms of source recovery from different wastewater flows. I would say that we still need some innovation at the treatment plant to even be better at recovering resources from these wastewater flows, from the black water, from the grey water, heat and nutrients and water even. And not only do we need kind of innovation technically, but also there are not only infrastructure implications, there's also implications for institutions and organizations if you start doing source separating wastewater systems where the aim is resource recovery rather than recipient protection. So our pilot projects are kind of also highlighting these institutional and organizational needs for development, if you will, and yeah, also breaking ground there, but there's room for improvement. So yeah, jumping into the drivers then, and as I said just in the beginning, we have collected these drivers in different projects together with water utilities here in Sweden and also with other stakeholders. I'm going to present them now real quickly before you get to talk to, or you get to hear from 3 of the pilot projects in ANCHOR. And the drivers are divided up in 5 subheadings, you can say. The first one being environmental protection, the second one being resource recovery, the third, drivers from a utility technical perspective, fourth being drivers from a city development perspective, and the fifth more from an innovation and other perspective. But first then, in terms of environmental protection, if we keep the nutrient-rich black water out of the water cycle, these systems can protect the environment from eutrophication. So we get less release of nutrients into the water courses. So that's one driver. And also by keeping the black water separately and out of the water courses, less pharmaceutical residues will reach our receiving waters. So that's another good driver. And the black water is a smaller volume, so you will have a smaller volume to actually do your treatment, your pharmaceutical removal treatment on. So it's been shown that we, with these systems, can have less release of carbon dioxide equivalents, mainly by a more efficient biogas production process possible with more of the carbon in the wastewater can be converted to biogas in a black water system compared to conventional, but also by the possibility of recovering more heat from grey water, and also by less release of nitrous gases. And there's a fourth one that I can't remember right now. Oh yeah, we can replace mineral fertilizer and thereby also reduce the release of carbon dioxide equivalents from these systems. If we jump into the resource recovery, I've said a few already. We can actually recover a higher amount of nutrients from source separating systems. It's particularly underlined when it comes to nitrogen, because nitrogen is not easy to recover from our conventional wastewater systems. And in source separating systems, you can more easily do that, and you can also recover at least as much phosphorus as from conventional systems, and often more. It all depends on how much sludge you can reuse in agriculture. I said it already, you can get higher biogas production. That has been shown in Helsingborg, for example. A big driver can be also that your grey water is warmer than a mixed wastewater, so you can recover more heat from that. And we also think it could be a potential for a simplified water recovery if you go for grey water, recovery of water from grey water rather than from mixed wastewater, because you will have less nutrients and pathogens and such in the grey water compared to a mixed wastewater. There are also technical drivers that have been mentioned by utilities we have worked with. One is the possibility of delay investments in existing infrastructure. At least in Sweden, we have many areas or many cities where the existing infrastructure is soon, if not already, has reached its capacity. And so city development can be hampered by that unless you kind of invest in that infrastructure. But if you do source separating wastewater systems and you treat, for example, the grey water locally or in a decentralized manner, you can delay that investment. So that can be, or it has been shown to be a driver in places. You can have less problems with the sewer overflows if you do convey your black water in a vacuum sewer. The storms will not a storm event will not mean that you will release less nutrients and pathogens from a system where the black water is kept separate. And some utilities have talked about that it's a driver for them that they can test and develop future-proof technologies that are less sensitive to erratic weather, for example. Some have also said that a source separating wastewater system can help them comply to organizational goals that they have, for example, on nutrient recovery. It has also been mentioned that the upcoming EU wastewater directive, with its more stringent effluent standards when it comes to nitrogen and phosphorus, as well as pharmaceutical residues, that the implementation of source separating wastewater system can be very helpful for meeting such increased demands. From a city development, it's kind of, some of these are just kind of turning and looking at it from a different angle. So, for example, I said before, you can, from a utility perspective, they are interested in delaying the investment in existing infrastructure. And this is another side of that same coin, that from a city perspective, they can see that it's a driver that these systems can allow development where it's not possible today, because the infrastructure is already at capacity, or because it's too expensive to extend conventional services to this particular area. Heat recovery closer to building can be a very strong driver for landlords or developers who have high demands on low energy usage per square meter, and heat recovery can really help in reducing the energy use at a building scale. We have seen, even in cities like Stockholm, there is great interest from the municipality in terms of looking at alternatives for using drinking water as irrigation in parks. So that's a driver from here. We've also seen, from a city perspective, we have a problem in our sector that our systems, our infrastructure is largely invisible for the inhabitants, and therefore they might be subject to misuse. And if we kind of resource recovery from source-separated wastewater systems can be a way of increasing the awareness of inhabitants and also thereby promoting a more sustainable use of our infrastructure. And finally, the last type of drivers could be innovation, to be innovative and to kind of push the innovation front forward has been voiced as one important driver for some utilities here in Sweden. We've also heard that there's this idea that there's a high demand on sustainability and a sustainable society from young people, and therefore that is also mentioned as an important driver. Resilience has come up in the latter years in terms of locally produced resources as heat and nutrients, and that if we can produce, the more we can produce locally, the more resilient our society will be. So this was a quick summary of drivers on a more theoretical level. Let's now hear from our pilot projects. With us here today, we have Hamza Shestadios from NSVA, which is the utility working in Helsingborg. We also have Gregor Rudolf Shopping from Hamburg Wasser, who is the utility providing services in Genfelder Au in Hamburg. And then we have Didrik van Doren from WML, who is supporting the project Superlocal in Kerkrade. And should I stop sharing the screen now so we can see people possibly better? Yeah, I'm doing that. And I hope you see Gregor, Didrik, and Hamza now. And so my first question to you all is, do you recognize your projects in this overview, this very quick and dirty overview of drivers, or are there any very important drivers that you miss? And the floor is free. Anyone can answer this question. All you guys.
Yeah, I might add. First, I have to say, before I worked at WML and now I work at WBL, but that's no problem at all because I represent them both here from the project, and the names are the same almost. It's the same province and the same project, so it's for a lot of people difficult. Now, what I noticed from another perspective, especially from the WML perspective, so from the drinking water perspective, was that one of the reasons is there's a trend of decentralization. And they didn't know what to feel about it, what to know about it. So they said, we need to gain experience in this trend by practical trying decentralization, and then it turned out to be source separation, new sanitation way, but they also did other innovations here in Kerkrade, but it was to get a feeling, a grip of what does this trend mean, and do we need to prepare for this? Is it a risk? Is it a chance? Is it, what might the impact be? So really getting experience with this new development in order to make a strategy on it. So that's a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
But for the other stakeholders, there were totally different reasons to go into the project.
So from the WML perspective, they wanted to test out decentralization as a trend and what it could do, and risks and challenges and possibilities with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gregor, would you like to add something? Is it some driver that you miss from this quick overview? Oh, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you at least.
Then I can jump in from Helsingborg.
Yeah.
While we're waiting.
Yeah.
For the sound to work. So I can also add, I think what Didrik said make a lot of sense. So in Helsingborg, we had these drivers with biogas production and nutrient recovery and so on. Those were the initial drivers. But and a lot of it also comes down to testing this in this scale. So in Helsingborg, decentralization is perhaps not the driver itself, but source separation as potential drivers for many resource benefits of the future. And then you need to test in some scale. And then this small scale is the city district we had available. And then I would also add that drivers has changed over time. So initially,
We'll get to that question in a minute. So, I'll give you the word in a second. Gregor, do you have?
I'll try again. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, very good.
Clear.
Yeah, I was saying that we were not missing one of the drivers that you mentioned, but maybe we have some little bit more specific views on it. But I can add to Diederik about the innovation. Also in Hamburg, the wastewater treatment plant is like there's one big centralized wastewater treatment plant for the entire city. So trying out new technologies is quite difficult. So this opportunity, have this pilot plant there in the Jenfelder Au, is a good opportunity to test things like source separation systems, but in general to test things. So we created a real life, like a test laboratory, which is very nice for us because we are a little bit independent from the central wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you.
I can add on that. I can add on that for us as well. That in the beginning, WBL had a very small test case, which was like a couple of offices, and there it was like not enough energy, money available to really test all the different types of technologies we wanted to test, because it wasn't used that often. And for instance, for an USB or a biogas, etc., it was all too small. So we also said they said we needed a bigger location with more residents, with more people actually living, to really test these technologies. So you had to look for a project which had the right scale, with enough inhabitants or users. And we found that in Superlocal, but that was not because of us as water organizations, but it was because the municipality and the housing corporation, they set a very high sustainability goal. And their main driver was the circular economy. And in the Netherlands, the circular economy is like, it's a national program plan to be circular in 2050. Whatever that might mean, because that's pretty difficult, as we saw in our own project. But they set a very high standard, and then it was open. Like, different parties can join, and that vision, like we circular, and they had no clue how or what, and openness created for us an opportunity to have an experimental place where we can actually experiment with actual people. So they had total different drivers, but we matched because we can make their project more sustainable and more circular, which they wanted, and we had a place where we can test different innovations.
Right, so you come in from different angles, but kind of the technology is what kind of makes it more sustainable, maybe from different angles. Yeah.
I might want to add here about sustainability, that for us in the beginning, because we started quite early, already in 2005, circularity or sustainability was not such a big topic as it is nowadays. So during that time, we had really high energy prices in Hamburg or in Germany. And that was the biggest driver for us, or also when we marketing the project, it was always about saving energy by separating this wastewater. So that was basically our biggest driver. And now it's all about sustainability. So that changed, and I know we come back to this later, but I wanted to mention that this was one of the biggest drivers for us.
Well, let's go on. We can continue then with you from Hamburg side. You say in the beginning, the largest driver was energy saving.
Yeah.
The yes. One and only, or?
No, of course more, but that was one of the main the main drivers. The other driver was also the technology leadership. I would say is also an important driver that we had.
Right, the technology leadership.
Technology leadership. So we are one of the biggest wastewater utilities in Germany. So of course we wanted to be upfront when it comes to new technology. So we put a lot of resources in it to learn about it, as Diederik said, to get to do the research, to do collaborations, develop collaborations with academia, so that we actually became the first large-scale source separation project in the EU. And then we could learn from it.
Right.
And I think maybe interesting to know how we approached the problem was we first tried the vacuum toilets, and then we built we collaborated with a kind of a farm where we just tried the toilets, and then once we learned that worked, then we went into this bigger pilot where we have 285 housing units. 835 housing units for 2,000 inhabitants. So really stepwise, starting really small with just testing the toilets and then going further and then finally implementing the entire system.
And then your drivers became more broadened with time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, one can say so. Yes. Yeah.
To cover more sustainability aspects with time.
Yes. For example, fertilizer recovery is something that we have discussed before, but we are not working on it right now. So that's not really a driver for us. It might become something in the future, but at the moment it's not a driver for us.
Right. And this is interesting, and that can lead back to you, Hamza, then, because you said that biogas, to increase your biogas recovery and to increase the recovery of nutrients were important drivers to begin with. And then it has changed. Are they still as important? Is it just that more have come in from the side, or have they lost a little bit in?
No, the biogas production in Helsingborg, the biogas production and the nutrient recovery are still important, especially now that we have a Swedish initiative on climate neutrality for the water and the wastewater sector. Then we see that we need increased biogas production and better sludge management overall if we are to have a chance to get to climate neutrality in the water sector. So that is important. To investigate. What has come also as additional drivers is the possibility to add source separation into existing infrastructure projects. So for example, we have a new city district called Östra Ramlösa, which we are to expand and build to the east side of the city in Helsingborg. And there we don't have sufficient capacity in the sewer network downstream. And then we actually have a big economic driver to have local grey water treatment up there with local discharge, because that will save us the investment of rebuilding the downstream sewer network before the end of its lifetime. And that's a lot of money, also a lot of human resources we save that way, and a lot of nuisance for the people who live in these areas, that we don't have to tear up their streets for hundreds of millions of Swedish kronor.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a shift as well. So the initial drivers of biogas, of more like resource recovery, are still important. But now with time, you see other drivers as well, especially in your expansion.
I would also like to add the removal of organic micropollutants has really increased in interest the past 10 years. So that has come up a lot. And then if you can have the separation of the black water with all the pharmaceutical residues from the grey water, where you also have more the microplastics and other kind of organic micropollutants, makes it easier as well.
Yeah. Thank you. And then the same question to you then, Diederik, for the superlocal and how drivers have changed from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, they definitely have, and there's one actually which is pretty strange, but that's the driver of subsidies. So funds, EU funds. So we had a couple, and first it's something that is useful to get your project, that directors and organizations agree with going on. But it can also become a driver, which is a bit strange, because for managers and directors, it feels like, okay, the EU finds what we have thought of is a very good idea because they fund us millions. And that also kind of becomes a goal. And we've also seen that the EU, which is good, it broadens the perspective on which you should focus on. Also the social sides, communication, dissemination. But also one of our fundings was from the LIFE program, and it was targeted at climate adaptation. And in the beginning of our designing phase, we did not do much with climate adaptation. But because this fund was focused on it, we started to look at it from a climate adaptation perspective, with drought issues, extreme rain events, and we designed the entire neighborhood differently, but actually pointed towards by the EU, not by ourselves. And it helped, of course, that in the same period we had in the Netherlands very dry summers and some very intense rain events, like there were also in Belgium and in Germany at the time. So that changed the perspective coming all together. So sometimes the drivers come from an unexpected place. And now it's way more on water saving, and therefore also the focus on grey water as a potential for reuse, indirect or direct. And the focus a little bit less on lead biogas for us, but also the fertilizers and nutrient recovery. It's more on climate adaptation now. So that's, yeah.
So there's a transition, there's a development in your understanding of, and you build knowledge, of course, as well during implementation. You understand more the systems and how they work. We have 3 minutes more, I think. So for these people, we have like 63 people online now. So for these who are listening and they are not planning or implementing, but maybe they would like to inspire their decision makers to get started. So what drivers would you kind of recommend to get politicians and decision makers going, to get them even interested in source separating wastewater systems for new city development?
Yeah, I would start. There is not the magic bullet, but I think there will only be the local drivers, the local reasons to do it that will be the most important ones. I think we heard a multitude of issues mentioned here today. So most likely people interested in planning it for their own municipalities found one or two that also they feel, oh yes, we have the same challenges where we come from. And that will most likely be good. Because the local drivers, if there are economy or local environmental goals and so on, will always be the most important.
Right. Anyone who would like to add?
Yeah, I can add, and then Gregor, you can add, of course. It's local, but it's also timing. So you need to really look for when there's an opening, when there's either a new policy or there's a discussion or there's an issue on for instance, sewage investments, and the municipality needs to do a lot. You have to look for when there are openings or issues playing, and you can use that. And it can be that it's every time you use a different argument because there's a different problem to implement the same project. Because our source separation hits so many of the sustainability criteria. It can also be totally like in Ghent, for instance. There's also in Kerkrade as well, a lot on the social side. So residents more involved, knowing more what to do. They have like the food waste grinders, which are collective, a water park outside, water reuse. That can be also a driver for implementing this. So like living in a sustainable neighborhood. So you have to be very aware of what's happening, and then you need, of course, project developers or municipalities that have a vision on it can be different. If they are not being part of it, or they are like very conservative, I wish you good luck.
Thank you. Gregor, would you like to add?
Yeah, I agree with you, Didrik, and I think what's really key is finding the right partner, I would say, or the right people. We had from the beginning people that were really enthusiastic about it and had really a vision. For example, the CEO of Hamburg Water, who really wanted to get this happen, and also the department leader where I'm working, but also politicians that are using this topic for an election campaign, or they're just like really convinced that this is the future. so that they are driving this forward, because it goes up and down. The media is covering different things. Now there were droughts, so then there's the focus changes. So you really need people that are driving this forward. For example, now we also have a partner that is using our grey water for watering plants and toilets. So it's really good to find the right partners that are on the tour with you, I would say.
Thank you. Let's summarize then. To build interest locally with decision makers, the tips from the experts are to look at local reasons, because there is always that's where you have to start with your local setting and what makes sense in your local setting. But don't forget to be opportunistic and look for the openings, and to use openings strategically, and to find the right partners and people to work with. And if you had a CEO on that was interested, Gregor, in Hamburg Wasser, of course that will help. Yeah, thank you. So if we do a little bit more of navel gazing then, or organizational navel gazing, which drivers were important for your own organizations to kind of get on board with this and kind of go with it, even though it kind of goes outside what you have to do legally as a water utility? Hamza?
The internal drivers, yes, I think it's a lot about what Didrik said before, that we need to be prepared for the future and for the future legislation and what is coming. So in that regards, if the municipality mainly wanted a source separation system for the environmental goals, and they helped that it would fulfill for the environmental goals for the city renovation project, from our side, from the water utility side, it was a lot about also testing these systems if they really could be a path for the future. Because we saw by then that a lot have happened in the Netherlands in the past and in Germany in the past 20 years. So why shouldn't it also work in Sweden, was the idea. But we wanted to test and make sure. So there's a lot of internal drivers to be prepared for the future. And I think in hindsight, that was a good decision, because now the upcoming legislation seems to fit well also with source separation. And sadly also the increased need due to climate impact in Europe also, we need new water services.
Yeah, thank you. Gregor, would you like to add to how to build enthusiasm? You had the CEO, yes. Okay, let's put it differently then. So I heard someone earlier saying something about how the operation and maintenance part of the water utilities may be not so interested in looking out into new systems because they know what they have, and maybe they are the more conservative in a utility. I don't know if you would agree, Gregor and Hamza and Didrik, or...
Yeah, I can agree. It is difficult, but again, we had 1-2 people that were enthusiastic about it, and they were driving this forward. Now they have, as far I'm quite new to the company, so what I heard, they have left, and it's difficult to make this transition to get the new people on board, and it's really important to get them on board. Otherwise, they will not take care about it, or they treat it as this is the area where there's always problems. Maybe there are not always problems, but it's just challenging. You know, you're facing different things, and then you have to find new solutions. But maybe it's the same amount of problems than for other systems, but it's new. So it's really important to have them on your side.
Yeah, but I have to say it's very difficult indeed, because such projects tend to last rather long, and there are a lot of obstacles. And for your own organization, it's extra. It's not your main task of doing this project. No, your main task is ensuring that there's safe and clean water every day of all the other, like our 17 wastewater treatment plants, and not this extra little one. So getting the operational people on board is very difficult, especially because you need like the ones that are also innovative and they can troubleshoot very well, and they know all the tricks because it's a new installation and a different technology which we don't have yet. And to really have people on board and to make time for it in the organization, that's very that's not a driver, but it's a barrier.
Crucial, to work on.
And that's so how to do that? That's difficult because it's not your main task. Then it's indeed you're doing an innovative thing, and it's sustainable, and it's about the far future. But they're mainly working on the day-to-day business, and that's a balance which is still difficult.
So Hamza, you wanted to come in, and I would like to hear about how. I mean, you want to answer to this, but you can weave it in, and that's the last thing I think we have to say. Sorry. Sorry. Have your operation and maintenance people changed in their views? How have they developed over these 4 years of? So if you can add that to your answer.
I can answer for Helsingborg. There are also some questions in the chat if there's time for that later. But I would argue that it's always a challenge with new stuff in wastewater. So it's not specific for source separation. I have been working not super long, but long enough to know that if you come with pharmaceutical treatment, quaternary treatment and treatment plants, whatever it is, there will be reluctance with some people. But the experience here is with 4 years, because we were mainly worried about the vacuum system. They have actually been positive, the technicians. It was not so much work that they feared when we began with the vacuum system. So that was actually funny, or not funny is not the right word, but that's a relief actually. Because it's you have to keep in mind it's a completely new system for a lot of people involved. So there will be challenges, but at least the expectations of the operators was a lot worse than it went much better than they thought.
Hamza, yes, there will be time for the questions in the chat. I think I'll hand over to Maria now, and you will be expected to answer as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a few people that have already put their questions in the chat. To begin with, there's I suppose it's a question from the US. Asking, are you marketing solutions abroad, and are there US projects working with you towards implementation? Do you know of any projects in the US? Any one of you?
Not yes on like wastewater reuse and gray water. There is a bit in I think in Phoenix, Arizona, there's actually some studies and I think some little things because there it's very dry. But for us, marketing, like we are mainly governmental utilities or semi-public, maybe, I don't know, for all. But our goal is not to market outside of our own district or our own region or our own city. Yes, we disseminate information, but honestly, like it's hard work. Not easy, but maybe very good for the environment and so on. But we're not technology providers or sellers of new things. So therefore, we don't market it, and we use mainly our network, and it's mainly in Europe and within our own countries, to also increase knowledge, share knowledge, and learn how to operate these things.
Yeah, maybe we should also add that one of the outcomes of this project is a lot of knowledge that will be disseminated. So I mean the whole intent of this project is to compile the experiences and the know-how from the different pilot projects and disseminate it. So hopefully by following the project you will find information that is useful also for you. There's a second question here about yellow water. I suppose it's urine diversion. Have any one of you been thinking about urine diversion because most of the medical residues are in the urine? Hamza?
It would be interesting to hear what the other side say about it, because here urine diversion or yellow water diversion, that was actually discarded from the very start because of the poor experiences in the Swedish eco-villages in the late 90s. So it was thought, never really justified in a good way, that it would not be accepted in practice So it was discarded in the very early stages of planning, 10 years before people moved in here. But now there's a new interesting project in Paris, of course, which we're all hoping very much for. That will be a success. So we will see.
Yeah, it was the same for us. At the beginning, we were considering it, but we thought that it would not be accepted by the users of the toilets because the toilets look so different. So we discarded the idea.
Yeah, we tested it in the previous site. No negative experiences. So, but in the end, we choose another technical configuration. But it's a good question with regards to the new EU wastewater treatment directive, where we need to remove medicines in the entire stream. So then it might be, in certain occasions, a very good solution.
So how would you characterize the international awareness and interest in your success? That was also a question from the US.
I think Hamza wanted to answer that question.
Yeah.
It says.
No, I pressed the button by mistake. I never used this tool in Zoom before, but I can start on. So yeah, there is. It's a growing interest. It's a small field actually. So I think, as we said before, the whole reason, a big reason for this Interreg project is to spread awareness about these systems. Now that we actually have some municipal actors and quite big demonstration sites. But so far, what interest there has been is a lot about water recovery, which is interesting. Both with using the vacuum system to not have like sewers dependent on water flows, but also the possibility for water recovery from grey water.
A question from Brenda Vidal. Do you think safety concerns will play a role in the future and become a more important driver? For example, decreasing the dependency of energy-intense fertilizer import or diversify the management of water in cities to make them more resilient? Yeah. Anyone who would like to answer that? Safety concerns.
If you had some thoughts about
No.
decentralization.
In a way, you did answer that question, didn't you, Didrik? Maybe not regarding the fertilizer, but the decentralization of wastewater treatment plants for safety reason, and then whatever resources you're taking out of that is probably up to the local context.
Yeah, like that's. We did a study before we started the project, and there we also looked like, okay, if there's a lot of decentralization from household scale to bigger scales, that can disturb the centralized systems. But if you implement them smartly in a hybrid way, where you have centralized and decentralized, but communicating with each other, you have more buffer capacities, you have more possibilities to adjust and change. You can prolong, like what is happening in Helsingborg, for instance, that you can keep the remaining centralized small piping of the sewage system, and you don't have to replace it. So in investment terms, for such long-term investment plans, it's a good idea to have hybridization, I would say. Decentralized is not going to fit everywhere, and I think no one is telling that. But it can be, in many occasions, due to different local reasons, a very good solution. But I find the fifth question. Oh, sorry, Gregor. Go ahead.
You had said that you wanted to answer the last question about trying to get more people involved.
Yeah, definitely. Like if I look to, for instance, Hamburg, it's nice because you're in a big city with universities, with different people, younger people, and this projects can attract younger people to work there. And I live in our company is in a province with especially less technical universities and schools. So attracting young people is very difficult. But these type of projects work because most of our interns, they work on superlocal, for instance, and they work less on the standard projects. So these innovative, sustainable projects are really an attractor for young people. And they say, okay, this company actually does work on sustainable things, or new things. And for them, it's a really interesting learning place, which might attract young people, which we definitely need because our own workforce is becoming older and older.
Okay, thank you for the questions, and thank you for participating and answering in such a good way. We just have 4 minutes left. I will add a last mentee question. It would be interesting to know what you're interested in hearing about in the next upcoming lunch talks. So please put your suggestions in there. I'll leave the mentee website open, so you can continue adding information or questions or themes into the last page there. And the next lunch meeting that will take place the 16th of April, and we will be talking about societal benefits of urban systems from a socio-economic and economic way. So we will bring money or costs and benefits into the equation as well. Thank you all for listening. And there is one. Hamse, did you have a last question?
No, he's waving goodbye. But maybe you
Okay.
want to put up the. Do you want to put up the mentee again? If someone. Oh, there we have.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe you want to share that. Or...
Yeah, I can share that as well. There has been aspects that have been brought up: experience of vacuum system, implementation challenges, transition in legislation, sustainable calculation, effects on CO2 emissions. Very interesting. Yeah, we will definitely take your...
Please continue, to fill it in.
Yes, I'll leave it open for some time and you can continue filling it in. Yes, there was a question. We have 1 minute or 2 minutes left. Is nutrient recovery really a driver at this moment? Is there a market for the fertilizer? If there is financially rewarding price for these fertilizers? That was a question. Anyone who would like to answer that?
Oh, I think he left already.
Yeah, maybe you can answer it.
If I can answer it.
Yeah.
Can you say it again? I was thinking Hamza was going to answer.
No,
That's the
if
question.
fertilizers really is a driver at the moment.
Yeah, well, I can just repeat what Hamza was saying, that it's still very much a driver for H+ in Helsingborg, at least. And there is a market. I think they have a market. They have tested it with their products, which is a struvite and an ammonium sulfate that they put into a pellet. And there is definitely a market for that. And the fertilizer regulation is opening up. The EU fertilizer regulation is opening up for struvite is allowed and ammonium sulfate as well. So for these kind of products, it's definitely a market. Certification is an important aspect, I would say, and for a market, but it's not like the value of the nutrients is going to pay for the extra costs of source separating wastewater systems. It doesn't work like that, but we don't do it for that reason only. We also do it for environmental protection, and we will talk more about that in the next upcoming in the societal benefits of urban water systems that we're going to talk about next time. We're going to go into costs and benefits of source separating wastewater systems. So we can...
Yes.
Yeah.
Then our time is up. Thank you so much for listening in, and hope you will connect also next time on the 16th of April. Thank you. Bye.